Welcome to the Daily Globe. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. Tonight, we begin with a seismic shift in North American relations, a moment that could redefine the economic landscape for years to come. The world is watching as tensions between two of the globe's closest allies reach a boiling point, sending shockwaves through boardrooms, factories, and households on both sides of the border. In a bold and unprecedented move, Canada has slapped $22 billion in retaliatory tariffs on the United States. These sweeping measures target a wide range of American goods, from agricultural products to manufactured items, and mark a dramatic escalation in a trade dispute that has been simmering for months. This is a direct response to aggressive tariffs imposed by former President and current candidate Donald Trump, who has made protectionist trade policies a cornerstone of his campaign. The result? Global markets are rattled, investors are on edge, and the future of nearly $1 trillion in annual cross-border trade is suddenly uncertain. The rupture between these G7 allies is the most serious in a generation, threatening jobs, livelihoods, and supply chains already strained by years of pandemic disruptions and shifting global alliances. From auto plants in Ontario to farms in the Midwest, the ripple effects are being felt in communities large and small. With the U.S. election looming just months away, political rhetoric is at a fever pitch. Leaders on both sides are digging in, using the dispute to rally their bases and score political points, leaving little room for compromise or de-escalation. Prime Minister Mark Carney frames Canada's move as a necessary defense of national sovereignty and economic security, insisting that Canada will not be bullied by its largest trading partner. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has labeled the tariffs as an act of economic warfare, vowing swift retaliation if elected. Tonight, we break down the history behind this standoff, the high stakes for businesses and families, and what this unprecedented showdown could mean for millions of people on both sides of the world's longest undefended border. The outcome of this conflict will shape not just trade, but the very fabric of North American life for years to come. To grasp today's crisis, we must revisit the evolution of U.S. Canada trade. NAFTA, launched in 1994, erased most tariffs and created deeply integrated supply chains, especially in autos and manufacturing. But NAFTA drew fire for its impact on U.S. jobs, a theme Trump seized on, leading to a tense renegotiation and the 2020 USMCA. The USMCA updated rules for digital trade, labor, and the environment, but left underlying tensions unresolved. A sunset clause now forces a review every 6 years, coinciding with today's conflict. The 2018 trade war proved that even formal agreements can't prevent tariff battles. The current standoff is a continuation of that unresolved fight, raising doubts about the durability of any trade pact in the face of economic nationalism. The latest crisis erupted in July 2025 when Trump, campaigning for a return to the White House, announced sweeping tariffs on Canadian lumber, dairy, auto parts, and a punishing 50% tariff on steel. Trump justified the move as protecting American jobs, but many saw it as election year politics. The timing, just as the USMCA's 6-year review was set to begin, sabotaged diplomatic channels and inflamed tensions. For Canada, this was more than an economic blow. It was a breach of trust. The tariffs threatened integrated supply chains, raising costs for U.S. businesses and consumers. Ottawa viewed the move as an attempt to bully Canada into submission. Prime Minister Carney was left with little choice but to respond forcefully. On September 15, 2025, Canada struck back with a sweeping $22 billion in tariffs, a move designed to match, dollar for dollar, the estimated economic damage caused by the latest round of U.S. trade measures. This was not a decision made lightly. For weeks, Canadian officials had weighed their options, consulting with industry leaders and economists to craft a response that would send a clear message to Washington without causing unnecessary harm at home. The result was a carefully calibrated retaliation, one that signaled both resolve and restraint. Prime Minister Carney stood before the nation and the world declaring, "We do not seek escalation, but we will not be bullied." His words echoed the sentiment of many Canadians, who saw the tariffs as a necessary stand for national dignity and economic security. Behind the scenes, government officials emphasized that Canada remained open to dialogue but would defend its interests with determination. The new tariffs were strategically targeted. They hit a wide range of U.S. goods, from Florida oranges and Wisconsin cheese to Midwest machinery and even some luxury items. The goal was to maximize political pressure on key American constituencies while sparing Canadian consumers from the worst of the fallout. By focusing on products with domestic alternatives, the government aimed to minimize price hikes at home. The strategy was clear: inflict economic pain across crucial U.S. sectors, especially in politically sensitive swing states. By doing so, Canada hoped to rally American businesses, workers, and voters to pressure the White House for a change in course. The message was unmistakable. Trade wars have consequences, and those consequences would be felt where it mattered most. This approach was not without precedent. In 2018, Canada and other U.S. trading partners used similar tactics to push back against tariffs, ultimately forcing some policy reversals. Now, with the stakes even higher, the hope was that history might repeat itself, and that the mounting costs of a trade war would become impossible for U.S. leaders to ignore. With nearly $1 trillion in annual trade flowing between the two countries, Canada's move was a calculated risk. The economic ties are deep and complex, supporting millions of jobs on both sides of the border. Disrupting this relationship could have far-reaching consequences, not just for businesses, but for families and communities across North America. The hope for Canada was that the economic pain would be sharp enough to prompt a serious rethink in Washington. Business leaders and workers in the U.S. were already voicing concerns, warning of layoffs, lost contracts, and rising costs. The pressure was building. But the danger was equally clear. If neither side backed down, the conflict could spiral into a prolonged and damaging trade war, with consequences that would ripple far beyond the negotiating table. For now, the world watched and waited, as two of the world's largest trading partners stood locked in a high-stakes standoff. Canada's tariffs sparked immediate political fireworks. Trump, at an Ohio rally, called it economic war, and threatened even harsher measures if re-elected. The Biden administration condemned Trump's approach as reckless, warning it endangers jobs and a vital alliance. U.S. business groups echoed calls for de-escalation, fearing supply chain chaos and higher costs. In Canada, Carney's tough stance won rare cross-party support, uniting the country behind a firm response. Carney insists Canada's actions are defensive, not aggressive, and calls for a return to fair trade. The rhetoric on both sides is hardening, shrinking the space for diplomacy. As tempers flare, the risk of a lasting rupture grows. The economic shock was immediate. Markets in Toronto and New York tumbled, reflecting deep investor anxiety. The sudden drop in stock values sent ripples through the financial world, causing a wave of sell-offs and panic. Investors scrambled to reassess their portfolios, fearing further losses. The volatility was unprecedented and the uncertainty palpable. Tariffs threatened thousands of jobs in both countries, from Canadian steelworkers to U.S. farmers and factory workers. The impact is felt across various sectors, with industries bracing for reduced demand and higher operational costs. Workers worry about layoffs and reduced hours, while businesses face the challenge of maintaining profitability in a strained economic environment. With over 2 million jobs tied to cross-border trade, the human cost could be severe. The interconnected economies of the U.S. and Canada mean that disruptions in trade affect a wide range of industries, from manufacturing to services. The livelihoods of millions hang in the balance as companies navigate the complexities of new trade barriers. Tariffs act as a tax, raising prices for everything from cars to groceries, fueling inflation on both sides. Consumers are hit hardest, facing higher costs for everyday essentials. The increased prices strain household budgets, leading to difficult choices and reduced spending power. The ripple effect extends to retailers and service providers who see a drop in consumer confidence and sales. The real danger lies in disrupting supply chains built over decades. Auto parts, for example, cross the border multiple times before assembly. These intricate networks are essential for efficient production and cost management. Any disruption can lead to significant delays and increased costs, affecting the entire industry. Companies may be forced to find alternative suppliers or rethink their production strategies entirely. Companies now face delays, higher costs, and the prospect of rethinking entire production models. The uncertainty makes long-term planning difficult, and the increased costs can erode profit margins. Businesses must adapt quickly to survive, but the path forward is fraught with challenges. The need for innovation and flexibility has never been greater. The pain will linger long after the tariffs are gone. The economic scars will take time to heal, and the recovery process will be slow. Businesses that have closed may never reopen, and workers who have lost their jobs may struggle to find new employment. The long-term effects on the economy could be profound, reshaping industries and altering the economic landscape. For ordinary families, the trade war means higher prices and economic uncertainty. The financial strain affects all aspects of life, from housing to education. Families must tighten their belts and make sacrifices, leading to increased stress and anxiety. The broader social impact is significant, as communities grapple with the fallout of economic instability. Canada isn't facing U.S. pressure alone. It's forging a united front with Mexico. On September 18, Carney met Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico City, signaling solidarity against U.S. protectionism. Mexico, also targeted by Trump's tariffs and aggressive policies, sees cooperation with Canada as essential. The two leaders discussed joint strategies for the USMCA review and deeper economic ties. While stopping short of joint retaliation, they warned that continued U.S. aggression could trigger a coordinated response. This Canada-Mexico axis is a major shift, showing middle powers can push back against unilateral U.S. moves. The EU is watching closely, hinting at broader alliances if the U.S. continues down this path. The message: the U.S. risks isolation if it alienates its closest allies. Experts warn this is the gravest U.S.-Canada rupture in decades, complicated by election year politics. Jennifer Lee, trade policy expert, says both sides are locked into hardline positions, making quick resolution unlikely. Former U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer notes that retaliatory tariffs are predictable but rarely solve core issues. He and others urge urgent dialogue to prevent lasting economic damage. Mexico's President Sheinbaum calls for North American cooperation, contrasting sharply with Trump's confrontational stance. Experts see the Canada-Mexico alliance as a potential game-changer, making it harder for the U.S. to pressure its neighbors. The consensus: trade wars inflict pain on all sides. Higher costs, disrupted businesses, and eroded trust. Only negotiation and a return to cooperation can end the standoff. As the tariff war escalates, the future of North American trade hangs in the balance. Decades of partnership are at risk, with millions of jobs and economic stability on the line. Political pressures may push leaders toward confrontation, but history shows dialogue is the only way forward. The stakes are enormous, not just for prices at the store but for the kind of world we build. Will this be a brief skirmish or the dawn of a new era of protectionism? The answer depends on choices made in Washington and Ottawa in the coming weeks. We'll keep following this story, bringing you the facts and context you need to understand this critical moment.